Hello and welcome everyone to tonight's webinar Wednesday. My name is Morgan. I'm a senior programs manager here at Can Do, and tonight's webinar is on how to make daily life with MS easier. We want to start off by saying thank you to our sponsors listed below. We could not make this program possible without them. So first, I just want to go over some housekeeping things to start. If you guys have attended any of our webinars before, there is a question/chat box for you to enter any questions that you have throughout the program. This webinar is going to be a little bit different. Usually we save the last 15 minutes for questions at the very end. However, just given the nature of this topic of just daily life, we want to make sure that we're incorporating the things that you guys are struggling with and want answers to. So feel free to continue to drop those questions throughout the webinar. And as we cover different areas of daily life, we will read those questions and try to tailor some of our answers to the things that you guys want to hear. So please use that chat box and we will follow along to see what you guys want to hear about today. For August, we have a couple different programs for you guys going on. We do actually have a special webinar coming up next Wednesday. It's dealing with the anxiety in today's COVID landscape. So we're just revisiting what COVID looks like today and how we can continue to manage through that. So again, that's next Wednesday. But the rest of the month is focused on kind of living that daily life with MS. We have our Jumpstart on August 11th, that's a Thursday, and that Jumpstart is on Get Started with Tried and True Life Hacks for MS. Our Jumpstart is a great place for you to go and meet others and have a little bit more of an interactive experience chatting with our healthcare professionals and others living with MS. Following that, we have a Your Questions Answered program on August 16th about all things daily life with MS. If there are any questions that you guys had today that did not get answered, we strongly encourage you to join that Your Questions Answered program at the end of the month and ask any questions that you may have that you might not have gotten addressed, or just to follow up and check back in at the end of the month. In addition, we actually are doing community programs now. So if you'd like to come and interact with us in person, we do have a couple places where that will be happening. On September 9th, we'll be in Ohio. September 22nd, we'll be in Georgia. September 29th, we'll be in Massachusetts. And in October, we'll be in Maryland. If you cannot make it in person, we're also hosting them as a hybrid program as well. And you can find all the information about how to register and join those programs on our website. And so if we get to see you in person, that would be awesome. And if you'd like to join virtually, that is an option as well. So without further ado, that's all of the housekeeping that I have. I'm going to introduce our lovely speakers for this evening. First is Mulinix. She is an occupational therapist and health and wellness coach. So welcome, Anne. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We also have Alex Ng, who is an exercise physiologist. So thank you, Alex, for also joining us. I can't wait to hear what you guys have in store for us tonight.
Sure. Hi, everyone.
So just a quick overview of what we'll be discussing this evening. The first main goal is to discuss strategies for making daily life activities easier, safer, and more energy efficient. We'll also go into the role of exercise in managing daily activities, as well as the way that tools and adaptations can benefit you and your whole family. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Anne.
Thanks, Morgan. Okay, hi everyone. It's really fun to be here with you. We always enjoy doing these programs, and know we learn a lot from you too, which I'm going to touch upon in a minute. But to get us started, we are going to have a reflection here. And what we want you to do is just to take a moment to visualize what your typical day looks like. And when I say that, it's not just the activities that you're doing in your day, it's what are you doing well in your day? What do you want to do better? What do you possibly want to begin? Or are there some activities that you've stopped and you want to start up again? What activities bring you excitement, joy? And I know I just posed a lot of questions in front of you, But it's going to make more sense as we go along here, because our intention for this webinar is really to empower you with the understanding of how exercise and using tools and techniques can help you feel less tired, can help you feel more balanced in your days, help you feel more engaged, more content. And I want to make note that you are the real experts here. So when we're going along and we're talking about topics that you feel you have some great success with, please use the chat box and add your tips and tricks for us, so you can share that not only with us, but everyone involved can benefit. That would be wonderful. So moving on to our next slide, talking about visualizing our days. You know, we have a lot in our days that we do, don't we? You know, we wear hats, a lot of hats, as well as are responsible for a lot of activities. And when we think about our days, you know, it's really defined by how we show up in our day and what are those activities that give us purpose and fulfillment. Of course, we have kind of those non-negotiable activities, such as self-care, maybe some home management work. And we also have activities of choice. Those are the activities that bring us pleasure and fun. Both these activities are really important for our well-being and quality of life. And it's important to have a balance of these activities, which is not always the case when we're, you know, trying to manage MS and not knowing what each day will bring, and trying to manage these activities with all these symptoms that may show up. So we do understand that, and that's why we're here to help empower you with possibly planting seeds or just any new tool or technique that can help. And when I'm talking about making change, think about a whole person approach, and that's what Alex and I are going to be using. And let me tell you a little bit more of what I mean by that. So looking at activities that you want to do more of, that you want to prioritize, we really want to take a whole person approach, meaning engaging your mind, having a mindset that's a can-do mindset, right? The spirit of can-do, taking control of what you can, letting go what you can't control, being open to learning and curious, doing things differently, and having a sense of positivity. And positivity, when we incorporate, we actually use different parts of our brain, and that helps us find solutions instead of being stuck in the problem. So mindset is really important when we're looking at adaptations and making life easier. Getting your heart engaged as well, focusing on what's really important to you. What are your priorities? What are your values? What is meaningful? Very important to engage our hearts. And of course, engaging our bodies. Our bodies, you know, it's important to listen to them and listen to what are they saying to us. Because sometimes we ignore them, but when we stop and listen, it can really help us prioritize and figure out what we need in our life to make us more well and happy. But it's not all up to us, right? I mean, a lot of responsibility. We don't want you to forget that you have a team, right, Alex?
That's absolutely right, Ann. And in fact, when you start looking at your priorities and imagining what you would like to be doing, sometimes it can feel rather overwhelming. And it's important to note that you've got a team behind you, or you should have a team behind you. And if you don't, then that's something that maybe we can talk about later on. But if I could have the next slide, we can talk a little bit about who might be able to help you to attain your goals, whether they be physical or emotional. I'm an exercise physiologist, so that's I'll just state that outright. So of course I'm going to say the most important person in your team is going to be the exercise specialist, right? Well, not necessarily. It depends on each person. But some people ask me about, well, do you get any exercise? And they will say, oh yeah, I go to physical therapy a couple times a week. Physical therapy is excellent. It incorporates exercise, but often it's kind of purposeful to try and solve some problem, whether it be for balance or getting your strength back, a recovery after surgery, and then you're on your own. So who is there to help you with an exercise program? And you're gonna, well, why is that important? We'll talk a little bit about that. And so I want to define a little bit about who an exercise specialist is. It's not like a neurologist. And in fact, many physical therapists have knowledge in exercise, as do occupational therapists, nurse practitioners, a lot of dietitians, some doctors, but not all doctors. If you're lucky, your physician or neurologist may have had one lecture on exercise during their med school. But in any case, if one of your priorities is to start an exercise program or to maintain function as opposed to some acute injury, then you want to consult some type of an exercise specialist, whether this be a physical therapist, a clinical exercise physiologist, an occupational therapist, nurse practitioner, or whatever. Of course, your neurologist is a very important part of your team and could be perhaps the primary manager of your disease. Often associated with exercise is the nutritional component, very important in health and wellness. It's just as important as some of the other things we'll be talking about. We don't have a dietitian speaking with us today, but we do have programs where we have a dietitian. And it's kind of interesting because I have I've been involved with programs that are only on exercise. And so we'll be talking about what's the difference between exercise, PT, physical activity. Any questions? The first question someone will ask will be about a diet that they've heard about. So a dietitian is extremely important. A speech language pathologist can help not only with speech and language processing, but also swallowing and cognition. That overlaps a little bit with some of the work an occupational therapist and nurse practitioner would do. And since you're an occupational therapist, why don't you talk a little bit about how your profession can help a person attain their
Well,
priorities?
yeah, and I think that's going to actually come through more too as we talk, because modifications and adaptations are key to occupational therapy profession. So we help people maintain as much independence as they can in their daily life. What is important to them, we figure out a way to get them to doing what they want to be doing independently, looking at everyday activities. I can talk more as we go along though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what can we do to help? And we're trying to incorporate everything as one, as opposed to, okay, this is exercise, this is diet, these are modifications. So within the priorities that you've reflected on, I can almost guarantee that if we look at this as a pyramid, the base, so this is I'd flip this around. So the base should really be physical conditioning. And I'm not even necessarily talking about exercise, riding a bike, walking, hiking, arm cranking, whatever, but just moving and being active, because the physical conditioning will help with strength and endurance. So it will help you get through the day, whether or not you're pursuing some type of a purposeful exercise program. So you just want to keep moving as much as you can. You want to have a strong base, and the physical conditioning kind of permeates your entire life. It can help with MS symptoms. So if you're active, it can help with manage fatigue, depression, anxiety. 5 minutes of physical activity can decrease anxiety. And we're also learning more about the role of physical conditioning, exercise, leisure time activity as it relates to the disease process itself. So kind of the hot topic in research is whether or not physical activity can affect the disease of MS, as opposed to just helping prevent cardiovascular disease or cancer, which of course is very important. So think of physical conditioning as kind of a basis for everything. And I'll give one more example. And that is, let's say you need to reach for package of sugar. Okay, a bag of sugar. Well, that's 5 pounds or 2.5 pounds. You want to be able to have enough strength to pick up the sugar. You want to be able to have the flexibility so that you can reach above your head to grab that sugar. So that's the basis, physical conditioning. And then I'll let Ann talk about how we can kind of modify the talk on that and what we can do to aid, what we can do for aids to help you attain your physical conditioning goals.
Yeah, thanks, Alex, and great examples. And I'm so curious about the research, so I hope we can touch upon a little bit of that more as we talk. So all I want to say here about modifications is we want to create our environments to work for us, not against us. And as we go along here, I'll be giving you more examples of what I mean by that. And adaptations are tools or adaptive equipment, as well as techniques like energy management. And these are essential to maybe looking at changing the process of how you do things to achieve, though, the same outcome, if that makes sense. So let's go on to the next slide, Morgan, and we can talk a little bit more about it. So this is, yeah, for you, Alex.
Yep, thanks. So you've heard me mention physical activity. I've talked about leisure time activity. I've even mentioned the dreaded word, exercise. And we kind of throw these terms around interchangeably, and to a degree, they should be interchangeable, but there are some differences. So I want to just talk a little bit about them just real briefly. And then for the rest of this presentation, though, we'll really be kind of talking about physical activity and exercise is the same. So physical activity is any muscle contractions that you make. Often it can result in movement of a limb, whether this be during arm cranking, picking up that bag of sugar, walking with some hiking poles, or doing seated yoga. Any type of movement is considered physical activity. It doesn't have to be purposeful. Just your activities of daily living is physical activity, most of them, or a lot of them. And again, that's why we want to have a good background of physical fitness, because it will help us with physical activities that aren't necessarily exercise. Okay, what is exercise? There I go again, using that term. Exercise is a type of physical activity that is very purposeful, and it's very structured. So on one hand, I might want to go and ride a bike for recreation with my wife. So we go out and we ride. Hey, that's exercise. I'm sorry, that's physical activity. On the other hand, if I say, okay, I need to exercise 3 times a week, and I want to exercise till I'm just sweating, and I want each session to be 20 minutes, whether this be on a bike or in a gym, in an MS gym or whatever, that would be exercise. It's structured and it's purposeful. Usually the purpose is to increase aerobic capacity or strength. So it could be very, very targeted. Okay, so that's the definition of physical activity and exercise. So the exercise is purposeful. Both help to maintain health. So it helps prevent cancer, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and it contributes to overall wellness along with a good diet, socialization, and some of the other things that Ann touched upon a little earlier. And just to reiterate quickly, it can help specifically for MS symptoms, particularly fatigue and depression. And along with that, there are some strategies for physical conditioning and exercise. Take it away, Ann.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So when we look at modifications or modifying your environment, really, I like this statement that your home is your sanctuary. So design your environment to meet your needs. So I'm going to go back to that whole person approach that I mentioned a little bit ago. And I want to break it down to your mind focus. When you're looking at making some changes to make your daily life easier, your mind should have that openness to be, oh, well, I said that kind of funny, to be open to rearranging and simplifying your environment so it's accessible to you, to make it easier to move around. For instance, we're such habitual people in our lives, right? And let's say we spend a lot of time in our kitchen, and you think about when you're in the kitchen and you're doing things and you're going back and forth and back and forth and up and down and all around grabbing things, we don't even think about, wow, if I could reorganize and get rid of a few things in my kitchen that I don't use more often and put things that I do in those easy to reach places, I can really save a lot of energy. So it could be so simple and basic as that, or taking out furniture or rearranging the furniture so the furniture is assisting you and not an obstacle. That's what we mean about modifying your environment and being open to change with your mind. And when I say heart focus, I think of what is really important to you. So prioritize those areas in your home or those activities that you're doing that you want to spend most of your energy on, and letting go of some, maybe delegating to others or just not even doing them, because sometimes we do things just because we do things, it's out of habit. So really aligning yourself in your daily life to what's important to you and using your most energy and the time in your day that you feel you have the most energy on these activities. And I also have under heart focus, investing in sensory comfort. And what I mean by that is creating an environment to meet your needs in terms of creating calm, creating more energy, creating more healing. And the way we do that is through designing your environment, colors that you put in your environment, textures, lighting, temperature, even aromas. So much research is coming out how our sensory systems, really paying attention to what we need and pulling that into ourselves in a very subliminal, subconscious way can promote healing, calm, and energize us. So don't minimize the importance of aesthetics in your environment. And when we're modifying your environment, when we think about our body, just really, we want to work smarter, right? Not harder. So it's simplifying. It's going back to, can I sit down to do a task instead of standing up? That would make it a lot easier, save a lot of energy. Can I use electrical appliances or technology instead of manual labor, such as using technology to turn on and off lights to regulate temperature for small appliances? So I really have a hunch that most people listening on here are already doing that. You may not even realize. So I want to affirm, if you really are looking at your day and analyzing it, you're probably doing a lot of things really well. And it may be just a few small changes that you could tweak that could make a big difference in your life. And moving on to adaptations. And Morgan, yeah, thank you. So tools and methods simplify the doing, right? So again, going back to that mind focus, being open to doing things differently, and heart focus, focusing on your purpose and meaning, placing the ego aside. Okay, so this is what I mean by that. Sometimes people are not willing to go back to some activities that require them to use, for instance, a system, a mobility device. They don't like that image. They don't want to be seen like that. And that's understandable. And there comes a time when one has to decide you really miss an activity, you want to get into your life to have more purpose and meaning and joy. It's worth adapting and using a mobility device because the outcome is going to produce so much more. So again, that's very individual, and I'm not trying to tell anyone what to do. I'm just giving an example of what I see a lot. And it is a process. Adaptations is a process. Body focus, when we use tools and techniques, the big thing is it compensates for weakness, for tremors, for balance, for fatigue. And the one takeaway if you want to do an activity and it's hard because of some of these factors, there is most likely a tool out there to help you compensate. And yet on the same, on a different note, there are so many of these, you don't want to go overboard and spend all this money. So it doesn't mean a tool is going to be the same grace all the time, and it may be a modification, but you'll figure that out as we go along. All right, let's move on to the next. We're going to stop here for a quote. And this quote by Parker Palmer: anytime we can listen to our true self and give it the care it requires, we do it not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose lives we touch. And what we want to emphasize on this slide is relationships, the importance of relationships. We're talking a lot about ourselves. We've talked about the team. And in addition to those two, we need supportive relationships, and we need to include them in making our lives easier. What's really important is communication, because our loved ones, people who care about us, don't really always know what we need or think they know what we need. So it's just really thinking about how we can communicate with the people who are in our lives, that we can tell them what I need, how to go about it, or what I don't need. So the power of others is really important as we move along here and thinking about those activities that give us purpose. When you think about it, a lot of times it includes other people. So just wanted to take note on that. Alex, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that's pretty good, Ann. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so should we move along and look at some polling questions? We haven't done this, so we're going to send those out now. In your daily life, what would you like to be doing more of? So we want to hear from you. Giving you a minute to fill this out so we get a better gauge on what our audience is thinking. Oh, interesting. Are you looking, Alex?
Yeah. How do I see this?
So it's in the panel.
Oh, here we
Ooh.
go.
So you didn't even have to look at that. That's really
No.
interesting.
Oh,
So
series
exercise is big.
What would you like to be doing more of? Okay, so it looks like exercise is the huge one. So I'm glad you invited me along.
Yeah,
Recreation and
and
leisure
recreation
is
leisure.
right
Ooh,
behind.
okay.
Interestingly enough, recreation and leisure and exercise can both be forms of physical activity. Household activities, basic self-care, caring for others. Okay.
Oh, this is good to know. So we're going to be addressing exercise and recreation. So good. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I like these.
Yeah, these are good. Gives us
Okay,
an idea.
so everyone, we would like to hear when that question comes up, what barriers or obstacles are you facing when you're doing what you want to do? Ooh, okay, that's really good. Really interesting. These are so helpful.
Okay, and let's see, how do I get there again?
So she'll bring up
How
themselves.
many times has the audience heard that? How do I get there from here? Okay. So, oh wow.
Yeah,
Is- we have a lot of concerns that relate to, I'd say, physical function, wouldn't you say, Anne?
yeah,
Possibly, so balance, mobility,
yeah.
weakness, coordination, fatigue is it's always big. Let me point out that we can really talk about two different types of fatigue here. And I think if I just mention MS fatigue, everyone knows what that is. But there can also be physical fatigue or muscle fatigue that could lead to decreased endurance. These two are not necessarily the same. So this is interesting to see fatigue. Cognitive challenges, it seems like we have a group that's managing pretty well. Unfortunately, we still see some lack of support. Okay, well, this gives us an idea of who we're talking to.
Hmm.
or
Mhm.
who we're talking with, I should
Yeah,
say.
yeah. So thank you, everyone. Wish we had a few more. That's really good. Thank you. So let's do our. We're going to go into this. Let's dive into these subject matters. And although this was not self-care, came up actually um, kind of lower at that poll, but this is a self-care question, and
Yeah.
it revolves around sleep. So we'll touch upon this, but we're not going to maybe take too much time on it, Alex, because of the other questions were really important.
Yeah, but
So
this is important. This is
yeah,
important.
okay, and we go. Okay, time. Okay, there's so much to talk about. The
Yeah.
question: struggling to get a good night's sleep because I often need to use a bathroom. How do I overcome the challenges of getting into bed, out of bed, and moving in bed to find a comfortable sleeping position? Here we go, Alex. So you can start
Okay,
on
well,
that.
well, one thing, kind of an overriding question is that of sleep hygiene and what does it take to get a good night's sleep? I'll let you, Ann, talk about some of the more specifics of that question. But believe it or not, again, I'm an exercise physiologist, but physical activity is very important for a good night's sleep. Some people will say exercise. So you want to have, a certain level of maybe physical tiredness. It could be pretty mild. Um, doesn't have to be a big deal, but you do want to be active. Remember when I say physical activity, any movement counts. It does not have to result in movement necessarily, but any and all muscle contractions count. And regular exercise can be one of the key ingredients in sleep hygiene as well as in maintaining your overall health. Now, I just mentioned how important it is to get some exercise, but I also want to warn you not to exercise too close to bedtime because even though you may feel tired after exercise or some leisure activity, the overall effect is that of a stimulant. We release something called norepinephrine, or some of you may know it as adrenaline or noradrenaline, and that actually could keep you up. Now, not for everyone. There's probably 10% in every crowd, and they say, "Wait, I exercise just before I go to sleep, and I need to in order to sleep." That's great, but for most people, you want to refrain from exercise too close to bedtime. And then to address more of the specific aspects of that question, why don't you chime in, Ann?
Oh, okay. Okay, great. But so important. You're right. I mean, I think of exercise as one of the number one lifestyle factors in our control that really contributes to a good night's sleep. So thank you for giving us more explanation about that. And I just modify. I kind of want to start off by saying reflecting on the question. The question posed, I often need to use the bathroom during the night. So what comes to mind first that I don't really have written up here is the team. So if you are finding that you need to get up and use the bathroom a lot, this is probably something that should be discussed with your physician because there could be some things that could be maneuvered around with medication, for instance, that can help with this. So the team is really important here, and the team is going to be important for more adaptations as well. And then the other thing I think about are other factors in someone's control. So to limit the amount of times that one needs to go to the bathroom at night, I'd really look at caffeine intake, and that caffeine should be consumed in the morning only. I would think of alcohol intake, and that should be limited, of course, and that it should be limited to not within 4 hours of sleep, not to have alcohol consumption. Food intake, you going to bed, content, not hungry, not stuffed. So all these little things do play a part that we can modify in our daily lives to help us with sleep and limit the need to have to go to the bathroom often. Also, when someone says I have a hard time getting in and out of bed and moving in bed, yes, adaptations is something that we really need to look at. But first, how can the environment be modified? And it can be modified simply by, let's use your mind and think out of the box. Is it arranged in a way that makes the bathroom really accessible for me from my bed? Do I have clutter around that could get in my way and be a hazard? Is it really dark at night to promote sleep? Do I have a little night light to help guide my way to make me safe? Is the temperature of my room cool to help promote sleep? So there's a lot of things that we can do to modify our environment to help with the accessibility and safety of getting to your bathroom and back, and then to promote sleep. Looking at adaptations, again, one of the things that comes to my mind is the team again. This is a really good, this person who wrote this question, this is a really good example of how someone could benefit from seeing an occupational therapist, because an occupational therapist or even a physical therapist can go over right away techniques of how to safely get into bed and out of bed. And the use of equipment is really helpful to keep you safe, save energy, and make going to the bathroom so much easier. A bed rail on the bed, a commode even next to the bed at night, possibly if it's really bad, maybe for a while. Just keep it, you know, these are just planting seeds. A raised toilet seat with handlebars to get on and off the toilet easier. All this equipment does make a big difference. And again, creating a ritual, and sorry, let me back up. Sheets. So this person was saying just moving in bed is hard. Well, there's equipment that many of you may already use, like a leg lift, or have you seen those ladder ropes to help pull yourself up or move around in bed? There's any piece of equipment for everything. And therapists can really help gauge, hey, this is what you could use, not just saying get everything. So maybe this could be helpful. You don't necessarily need that. So sheets, I have found people like satin sheets. I don't know if that's true for some of you out there, but that makes it really easy to move around in bed. Or maybe even like a satin polyester nightwear, so you can move easier and stay cool so you don't overheat. And also the positioning, the question did bring up some positioning in bed. And you know, that's hard for me to answer because we all have our certain way we like to sleep. I always think I like pillows, like those body pillows to help for my lower back. And yet for other people that gets in the way and it makes it really hard to move around. And you want to think about, is your head elevated enough so you're breathing clearly, but not too much that you're affecting your neck? So these are really good questions. I don't see anyone adding anything to the chat if they've had success in this area. So add that if you can. And you just popped on, Morgan.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna pop on and bring up some stuff that I've been seeing in the chat as we expand into the greater topic of self-care at large. So one of the questions that we got was how to bathe when unable to use a shower or a tub. Do you have any recommendations for, you know, bathing and showering and the different adaptations or modifications that exist there?
Yeah. That's obviously a really good question, and it must be kind of frustrating not to be able to do that. You see a picture on here of a shower that whoever wrote that question is probably saying, I don't have that, so it's not helpful. Yet there are ways to get around this. And one thing that I'd love to hear is that you're using wipes, disposable wipes. There's dry shampoo, a spray bottle for when you're using when you're toileting, you can use a spray bottle as if it was a shower. So easy ways to get some cleaning when you don't have that accessibility of the regular shower or tub. Using a kitchen sink to wash your hair. It's summer, maybe hot outside, that you can get out and even sit down and use a garden hose to kind of, you know, to rinse off and shampoo your hair if you're daring. The other thing I thought of too is, I don't know if you have accessibility to get to a community center or a fitness club, and every so often use their showers because they are handicap accessible and they do have everything. They're really convenient for if you want something a little more thorough. I
I
hope
have
that.
another self-care question around brushing your teeth. So someone suggested or asked, my tremors are so bad, I'm afraid I'm going to break my teeth when I'm brushing them. What
Oh,
can I use? I've tried using a child's toothbrush, but I don't know if there's any other suggestions.
oh, that's really frustrating. So yeah, taking a deep breath, right? And I appreciate this question because it sounds like you're curious and you're up for the challenge and you're gonna make this better. So with tremors are tricky and modification is the first step I would take. And what I mean by modification is your positioning to how you brush your teeth. So tremors can be subsided if you put weight into your arms. And if you could picture this sitting at a counter, leaning against your arms, so your arms have stability. You can't really see that. And then you bring your hands together and you use the toothbrush. So you're using your head to move and brush your teeth instead of your hands, because that creates more ability to get those tremors activated. Adapt with an electric toothbrush. That would allow the toothbrush to do the work for you and you wouldn't have to move. The positioning, though, would still be really important to modify those movements of your arms. And there are a variety of electric toothbrushes that you can even put in your mouth and bite down, and they do all the work. So you can be hands-free. So there are modifications and adaptations to getting your teeth cleaned. And one other thing is just maybe upping your dental hygiene appointments and seeing if you can go in more often to get a thorough clean and floss. So I bet flossing is hard too.
Great, thanks so much for all those answers. Let's move on to some exercise.
Yeah, let's get into this.
Okay, well, thank you. Here's another question. Okay, so my MS wipes me out. I have a pattern of starting an exercise routine, that's good, and then stopping it because of fatigue. First off, this is great. This person has started her exercise program and recognizes that regular exercise is one of the key ingredients to maintaining not just overall health, but also wellness. And then also, do you have suggestions on how I can be successful in exercising on a regular basis? So let me discuss these questions first before moving on. That way I won't get sidetracked. But so for a person who gets wiped out because of fatigue, again, let's recognize there's two types of fatigue. One, for lack of a better term, I'm just going to call MS fatigue. And then the other is the normal fatigue, well, the fatigue we get from exercise. So if you're going to hike, or if you're going to be on a recumbent bike riding around for 20 miles, if you run a marathon, you're going to expect to be tired. That is normal. However, it could perhaps interact with your MS fatigue, in which case now you can't get through the rest of the day. So what I like to recommend for people who are stopping because of fatigue, at least with respect to the exercise fatigue, there's something called the 2-hour rule. And this pretty much says that you should, after 2 hours of your exercise, you should feel about as good as you did before. And if you're not, then you need to cut back on your exercise, either the amount of exercise, meaning the time, or how hard it is, which we call intensity. So you need to back off, either in terms of how much exercise or how hard it is. Now, the other thing is sometimes when you exercise, it could make your MS fatigue worse, particularly if you're temperature sensitive. This could also be true if you're exercising or doing any physical activity outside where it may be hot, or outside of an air-conditioned room. So there's several things that one could do for temperature-related MS fatigue, or even exercise fatigue. And that is, you can wear a cooling vest, and one should not feel out of place wearing a cooling vest. I don't know if any of you are cycling fans, but at the Tour de France this year, we saw a lot of cyclists riding with cooling vests on, or at least using cooling vests to pre-cool their body before exercise. And that's a really good strategy for anyone, especially for someone with MS. And that is you kind of pre-cool your body. I've even seen a study where a person gets into an ice tub before exercising because it helps limit the amount of temperature related fatigue. So there's other strategies. If you are inside, you can use a fan. Um, keep the doors open, use air conditioning. Uh, those would be probably the main ones. Some people have told me that drinking a slushy works quite well. So uh, with those suggestions in mind, you do want to try and keep up your exercise. And so you may need to modify it so that you're not doing as much or it's not as intense. The goals for someone with MS is to strive for 150 minutes per week. And I'm going to say physical activity as opposed to exercise. Remember, any movement counts. One of the things we're learning is, and this is contrary to what a lot of people think, is that it does not have to be continuous. If you can get 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, do 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening, but not too close to bedtime. That could get you outside of the hottest part of the day. And the other thing that we'll talk about a little later on, more for leisure time, and that is make it fun. If you make it fun, then it's going to be easier to keep at it. Uh, One of the second parts of that question was um, how can I be successful on a regular basis? If I had a polling question right now, I would ask how many of you regularly take your medications? It's just part of your life, right? Well, everybody, the entire United States needs to start doing this with their exercise. There's kind of a phrase or movement where we're starting to consider exercise as medicine. So just like you would take medicine every day, you need to make sure that you are able to fit your exercise in every day so that it's a therapeutic ritual.
Hey Alex, so
We've
since you're talking about exercise as medication, I have a quick question that came in through the
Yes.
chat that I think might be helpful. Someone asked how they can find someone like you, like an exercise physiologist or a personal trainer, to help them build that kind of routine. Do you have any suggestions of who to ask and how to find someone?
Ooh, yes. If you can find what we call a clinical exercise physiologist and look on the certified by the ACSM, and there may be some other good ones that I'm missing here. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, Morgan and Ann, to chime in as well. But any type of ACSM certification, even a personal trainer or an exercise specialist or a clinical exercise physiologist or some type of certified trainer that has experience with clinical exercise prescriptives would be helpful. And OT would be very helpful. And a physical therapist would also be very helpful. And with all of this, I'm assuming that the person has some experience with MS. And Morgan, do you have anything to add?
The only,
I'm very ACSM centric, so I don't want to
yeah,
say that
and
other people are not qualified.
no, Alec, no, this is great. And I, I have just found that I've had a lot of success with using trainers at local fitness clubs. And even if they're not an MS specialist, they have the foundation of exercise, obviously, within their expertise. And I team them up with maybe a physical therapist that's on their team
Ah,
or a doctor, so they can get the advice of what they're recommending, and then they're the ones that help follow through with it.
great.
So
So
a local club can be real successful too, the Y or any
so
fitness.
utilize a good trainer as part of your team as opposed to just going to them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a really good question.
yeah.
And I think Alex really hit all the bullet points well on this slide. And I really appreciated your comment, Alex, about the research that's finding we don't have to exercise for an extended period of time. It could be small bursts here and there during your day. So just to add a little bit to that, it's having options. So exercising when you have fatigue at your lowest, in cool places, have the as much as you can. And if you're not feeling like, if you want to go outside and it's too hot, that you have a backup plan with like a YouTube video and do a seated aerobics. So make sure you have some options so you can still succeed. And I want to pull in relationships here too. They're also a part of your team. And it helps us to stay accountable so we can follow through having to exercise with someone else. That helps us show up and get the job done.
And that helps me a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's move on to some recreation and leisure.
Yeah, let's move on to that.
Okay, so what do we got going on here? All right. So my MS has, oh my gosh, my MS has really worsened over the past 2 years, impacting the fun my husband and I share through dancing, biking, and hiking. Is there anything I can do, or do I need to accept that I have to give it all up? First off, I would say no, do not accept that you have to give up any of this, particularly fun with your husband. I could take each one of these in turn, in fact, as opposed to speaking to it generally. And there's actually research in dancing, um, both in ballet, salsa, and another partnered form to dance, ballroom dancing. And what these studies have found was that dance actually results not only in improvements in balance and physical conditioning, which is kind of what we've been talking about, but also cognition. Okay, but we're thinking that, oh, maybe I can't dance as much. Well, one of the things is you could try to do ballroom dancing or partner dancing. And what we found is that when you dance with a partner, in social dancing, your partner, uh, if they don't have MS or any other neurologic conditions, or even if they do, you can support one another. So your partner acts as an ambulatory aid. So instead of using the walker, now you're leaning on your partner.
And
And
that's so great, Alex, not to interject here, but when we looked at the poll, so many complain that a limitation of theirs is balance. So this
exactly.
partner dancing just sounds really like thinking out of the box. What a neat kind of activity to do.
Right. So if you've never tried ballroom dancing or social dance, if you say ballroom to a ballroom dancer, they're thinking competition. So I guess technically the real term is partnered social dance. And then that way you can include the polka. But anyway, and the other thing about dance is it's easily modified because with any given beat of the music, you can either step to that beat or step to every other beat or double step to one beat. And you would still be in rhythm with everybody else, but you wouldn't necessarily be doing it at the same intensity or difficulty as everybody else. So that is one thing that you could do. I would try partner dancing. And for biking, I think one of the previous slides showed there's all sorts of ways to adapt to biking. I recommend a lot of three-wheel cycles to people. And if you don't have use of your legs, you get an arm cranking cycle that's recumbent. So this can allow you to still ride with your husband or spouse or friend. There's also tandems. There's also tandem recumbents. In fact, just the last webinar, we were speaking at a pretty good length about a tandem recumbent e-bike. So e-bikes are something that gives you a little bit of a motor assist, but you're still moving. So it's not just purely motorized. And I think those are going to be a game changer for people with MS or anyone else who may have difficulty keeping up with someone or just being able to cycle on their own.
I sure see a lot
So
more of those.
yes,
Yeah,
they're really they're big. It's the
yeah, they
next big thing. Hiking, one of the cool game changers in hiking is using the hiking sticks.
are.
So instead of it being a cane or a crutch, a Canadian crutch or something, you're using a hiking stick. So now you're one of the cool kids out there, hiking outside. Being outside is very important. And I'm kind of getting back to Anne's aesthetics and heart. And that is there's something that's missing that being outside helps to put back. And there's actually studies on this. You may have heard the term forest bathing, but health improves, wellness improves, and there's a lot of psychological aspects that improve just from being outside. Not to mention the fact that it will help increase your vitamin D. And in fact, that's a good lead into kind of recreation. Other modifications, there are all sorts of adaptations you can use for skiing, for even for rock climbing, fishing, hunting. We even have a person dancing down here.
Yeah, in fact, really, if when you're looking at physical activity in any sport, there is pretty much out there an organization, and you can find this on the National MS web page about adapted sport, whatever it is, there's information on that sport. So there is that ability to keep up your exercise as well as leisure. And just emphasizing leisure is so important for pleasure and joy and fulfillment. We get so wrapped up in the have-tos and getting through the day, and we don't take a lot of time for enjoyment because a lot of times we don't have energy. We understand that. So really planning ahead is so important to get recreation back in your life if you're lacking it right now, and thinking out of the box. What else can I try? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be exercise related. It could be a new type of craft. It could be an artsy type of endeavor. And you can see in this picture in the bottom right hand, there's adaptations for the hand for doing, anything that requires hand work.
And
recreation. Pardon?
And in fact, Anne, there's actually a lot of work being done now on the arts in medical care, and this would include the painting that's down here, the theater even. And
Yes.
if you look at the top middle picture, there's this older couple. It looks like they're gardening, which is a great form of physical activity. But what the picture doesn't show is as soon as they're finished, they're going to go grab a guitar and a fiddle and they're going to play music on their porch. And then their neighbors will all come up. One of their neighbors has MS, so while they're playing the music, the other couple will be dancing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So laughter is also a really important thing to add into our lives, right? But it's really thinking, going back to, if you have a will, there is a way. You have a team behind you, you have supportive relationships. And just taking that little, that step forward it's one step at a time.
That's
You're
great.
popped on, so I'm going to stop talking because I know we're.
Oh no, all good. And so the last, we just have this one little catch-all, and I have another question that came into the chat that I think is an important aspect of daily life, and that is, my mobility challenges really show up in the workplace with travel requirements from employers. So do you guys have any suggestion for getting modifications, adaptations, or anything for the workplace, or kind of at large, how we can transition this into some of the key things that we've learned today, and how we can take that away and provide ourselves with the tools we need to live our daily lives as easy as possible?
I'll start off, and this isn't really directly related to the question, but with respect to the office and perhaps rearranging, getting some different furniture, managing fatigue, you can exercise even in the workplace. Again, it has to be a therapeutic ritual. You need to find the time. There's all sorts of seated exercise. I'm sure there's YouTube. In fact, I'm sure Can Do probably has some resources to help you with seated exercise. We call them snacks, or just little bits of exercise that you can catch whenever you can. So that could help, get through the day, particularly if it helps manage your fatigue or anxiety. I'm sure Anne can speak more specifically to this or to that question.
Well, in the part of the question, it also talked about travel, and that's, all this is kind of a webinar in itself. It's hard to get down to the meat of this. Yet, I guess the takeaway, I think, with travel is really a lot of planning, and to put that ego aside. If it's there, it may not be there, but you saving energy, using the services at the airport to get you to your gate, the transportation. Even if you don't use a walking device, would you be willing to have walking sticks? Would that be helpful, or a cane just to get you there? Having a doctor's note, or something that you could show forth that you could get special accommodations, get on the flight, the first one on the flight. Little things like that that can really add up to being some big changes for you to making that easier. And I feel for you too. I mean, our world has become so Zoom oriented. I know travel and seeing people face to face is really important, but hopefully that travel can decrease a little bit if it helps you with managing your workload.
Thanks. And to speak to Alex's point, yes, Can Do has tons of exercises out there for you guys. Our exercise snacks can be found on our website and all of our social media pages, which are great little bite sizes of exercise, both seated and standing. We also have MS Moves, which is a fitness with a functional focus. So we really focus on, anything from bed mobility to car mobility to climbing stairs and curbs. So hopefully between all of those resources, we've got something for you. As we wrap up today's webinar, I'm just going to kick it back over to our presenters to kind of wrap up our key takeaways today, and then I'll go over a couple of details of some programming that I'd mentioned previously, since I know some of you guys had some questions.
And Morgan, also to say that you've attached some ADL adaptations, some great handouts, so don't forget to look at those attached to this webinar as well. That sums up of what we've been talking about and directs you to some places where you can get adaptive equipment too. Takeaways: every challenge presents an opportunity to choose how you want to respond to it. Again, looking at your mindset and having the mindset of curiosity and positivity to find ways to do more of what you want to do. And be patient with yourself and have some self-compassion. That's really important. Anchor yourself in those activities that are meaningful. So bringing back some joy into your life if you're finding that that's out of balance. Use your body more productively with tools and new approaches. And Alex?
And exercise is the key to daily living ease.
Yay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both of you for all of the information that you presented today. I know that there were a ton of questions in the chat that didn't get answered. We just can't answer all of them in the short time that we have together. We strongly encourage that you guys come to our programs later on in the month, like our Jumpstart and our YQA. Those are great places to not only ask more healthcare professionals these questions that you have, but also to discuss with each other. There were so many great suggestions that came in through the question box as well. So please join us later this month. Additionally, our community programs, we had some questions about those. They do stay the same from area to area. So if you're joining virtually, we suggest that you join one that works great for you. And so we hope to see you either online or in person. As always, follow us on all of our social media. We've got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We also got a TikTok and YouTube. And then, of course, we have our special webinar next Wednesday on dealing with COVID in today's COVID landscape. So we hope to see you later on this month at any of our other programs. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you again to our speakers. We hope to see everyone